Again, welcome to Nurture Your Mental Health During Your Job Search. This is a collaboration with both the counseling and psychological services and the Career and Professional Development Centers Litsky Family Career Readiness Program. So Jeff, would you like to introduce yourself? Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Jeff Beyer. I'm a psychologist, a therapist over at the Counseling Center.
Hi, I'm Dareen. Basma. I'm a therapist at the Counseling Center, but also part of the outreach team.
And my name is Amy Tavares, and I am an intern with the Career and Professional Development Center and the Office of Disability Resources. So to just give a brief overview of today's presentation, I'm going to be giving a brief description on the current landscape with the job search. Then we're going to talk about some common challenges with when it comes to looking for jobs. Then we're going to talk about nurturing your mental health while doing your search. And then we're going to discuss a few frequently asked questions that students often talk about and ask, and how to address those. And then we're going to discuss some resources and upcoming opportunities for you. So a brief overview of the current landscape. This is by no means a comprehensive description of everything that's going on. And as I'm sure all of you know, that there have been a lot of changes due to COVID-19. So some companies are canceling their internships or withdrawing offers. Some companies have reported recruiting normally, and some companies have been increasing their recruiting. Many positions have been in a transition to virtual, and some positions, their start dates have been delayed. So again, this is not comprehensive, but the CPDC has many webinars and information on their website that I highly recommend that you watch to kind of learn more about the changes going on due to COVID-19 and how you can adjust your search. And it's important to remember that options still exist despite everything that's going on. So positions are still being posted daily. So keep applying. It may require you to be a bit more flexible with what you're looking for. So in particular, you may want to start searching in industries that are doing well, such as healthcare, IT, media companies, business softwares, and things like that. And it's also important for you to kind of remember that your first job may not be your ideal job, and that's okay. If you can stay in a position for at least a year or two and you can gain new experiences and new skills, that could be a good next step for you, even if it's not the perfect job for you. And then another thing is networking. Now is a good time to do some networking, especially since a lot of people have gone virtual. So using your LinkedIn to connect with other alumni and also with people who work in the industry to learn more about it and to keep building that network. And then it's also, while you're looking for jobs and networking, it's good to think of what other ways you can build some skills while you're in the process of looking for jobs, like focusing on your personal projects or reaching out to companies to see if they have any projects you could work on, working with a research lab, or even taking a class. So finding things that you can do to build those skills and that experience.
So there are some common challenges that I think people are experiencing, students are experiencing, especially as they enter this job search during these times. Some of the stuff that we've been hearing is there are no jobs, not knowing where to start, not feeling able to kind of rally mentally and emotionally to start the search, maybe experiencing job offer withdrawals and not being able to kind of come back from that. Trying to find some positivity in this feels a little bit difficult to do right now. Feelings of imposter syndrome. If so-and-so didn't get a job and they were really good, there's no way that I could get a job right now. Or feeling like you're not really good enough, like you're not meeting qualifications or criteria. feeling really overwhelmed by the stalling, the slowing down. There are a lot of freezes, as Amy had mentioned, and feeling really consumed by that fear of the future around what that could hold. Sometimes really manifests into feeling paralyzed and not being able to move forward. Of course, resumes and cover letters on any given time are really frustrating to work on and take a lot of mental energy to do, but feel even more difficult to kind of tackle right now. The idea of finding a job, going through different interview processes during this time, but also trying to navigate different ways of being interviewed virtually versus in person. And of course, the negotiation piece. Negotiation in general for a new grad is really difficult, but especially during these times where a lot of individuals might be feeling like I need to settle for whatever I can get because everybody's really struggling. So trying to think about that or frame that or yeah, I wonder what that would look like for you. Those have been some of the common challenges that we've been experiencing. Things that could possibly impact your mental health. I feel like a lot of this feel really clear and really obvious. A lack of motivation to do anything. This we've experienced with students who are and are not graduating. Everything feels really overwhelming right now, and finding some motivation to move forward is feeling difficult. High levels of stress and anxiety, really rooted in the ambiguity of the future. When is this going to shift? When are we going to come out of this? When is the hiring process going to restart again? I don't know where I'm going to be right now. So a lot of these sentiments feel very common. Feelings of hopelessness, of loss, of fear, feeling like everything that you've worked for really amounts to nothing at this point because you can't secure the job that you're wanting or hoping for. There's that financial insecurity piece as well that could play into it. Again, the uncertainty and the ambiguity feels incredibly common for everybody, but especially for those who are going through this transitional period of graduating, trying to find a job, moving on from CMU. Physical and cognitive fatigue, really feeling tired, exhausted, worn out, although feeling like you've done nothing all day, but there's something about consuming everything that is related to the situation and to thinking about the future can be really taxing. And then the grief and loss, of course, of what you imagined your final year looking like, what do you imagine graduation to look like, job process, moving to a new city, relocating, really starting, for me, at least when I graduated, what felt like my adult life. Like I finally am no longer a student. I'm finally this this adult that can pay my own bills. So there's some grief and loss there as well that is important to think about and to process.
I'd like to take a few moments to talk about the predicament and meaning the fact that you are graduating at a time when there's a pandemic. Graduation is hard enough in the moving on, but now we have this bizarre situation with the pandemic and it can be very disappointing and so on. But I want to talk about what to do to make the most of the predicament that you are in and to actually nurture along your mental health in a good way. The feelings of uncertainty now, of course, like even more than ordinarily would be, but as you may or may not be fully kind of reminded of this, the truth is that none of this takes anything away from who you are and all you've learned at this great school and all you've accomplished here takes nothing away from who you have become, how you've matured as a person, your talents and skills, what you're capable of. You take all of that stuff with you. You've done your part. There's a good reason people are piled up at the exit door at CMU. They're going out and doing their thing, and we have reason to think that you will be too, in spite of all the uncertainty. In fact, you have a lot of momentum built up, even though you may not feel it at the moment. It's waiting to be released like a rocket on the launch pad, ready to go, all fueled up. But what this predicament may also do is require you to be a little more nimble or flexible in finding your path forward. Who plans for anything like this? And an additional layer of uncertainty added to a situation that already has too much can be rattling to the psyche. There's not a lot any of us can control in all of this, but the truth is that all along there actually has never been much real control in it anyway. If you think about it, control is mostly an illusion, something we cook up to comfort ourselves during a pandemic. But you do have, if not control, you do have your direction, and you have your will, and you have your own sense of agency. Not control, but a whole lot more than that. And apparently that's okay. Somehow you manage to summon from deep within yourself some kind of abiding trust that you'll be able to handle whatever comes along. It's like walking along on a foggy day, needing to get somewhere. You can see pretty clearly whatever is immediately in front of you, but off in the distance, not so much. It's pretty vague, it is uncertain. So you walk deliberately, you walk attentively. You're mindful of what's right in front of you and deal with the things as they present themselves. You know the fog will clear. So you continue along the path just the same, right in the face of the uncertainty. You don't fight the feelings, don't deny the ambiguity, don't pretend you're not in a fog, don't demand that these feelings be otherwise. This is, in fact, how you develop a genuine sense of self-confidence and resilience. This is how it happens. This is where it comes from in moments like these. Instead of demanding control or wishing you had more, which you will not have had anyway, if you just allow yourself the feelings and allow them to be there, don't fight them, just allow themselves to be in you and proceed anyway, not because you have certainty, but because you are committed to succeeding. If you do that, you'll become genuinely confident, and you'll reinforce to yourself a resolute commitment to your own well-being. It's a key ingredient to personal growth and mental health. Maturing and growing as a person doesn't happen in the abstract. It happens through embracing moments like these. It happens at a particular time and a place, like now during this job search during the pandemic. For better or worse, opportunity is being served up on a platter for all of us right now. Hopefully, in the long arc of your own life, this will just be a curious asterisk in the story, but that's a scary part, isn't it? The uncertainty. How to best keep your eye on the prize as you, like a soccer player, bobbing and weaving through the defenders looking for a path forward toward your goal. This particular transition for you all, from school to whatever is next, calls out to be especially mindful and deliberate in how you take care of yourself as you move through it. You want to be at your best. Luckily, your emotional well-being is something that you can do something about. Carefully attending to yourself is guaranteed to benefit you. The psyche rewards every loving attention it is paid. And the grand prize, I think, at this moment, is to leave college with your little diploma in one hand, firmly clenched, and a sincere commitment to maintaining a good relationship with yourself in the other. Both of these. Keep one eye on the goal, keep the other eye focused with as much honesty and clarity as possible on your internal gyroscope, your most genuine self. This is where your developing wisdom and best judgment reside. If you're going to move through this, let's do it with the grand prize in hand. So rather than just giving you some general tips, I want to offer you a little guiding metaphor to illustrate how, or one way anyway, how the psychic system works, so you can tailor that understanding to yourself and your particular circumstances. Even a simple understanding of how psychic systems tend to work can help avoid some of the common traps we can fall into. Knowing what works for me, of course, well, you know, that's something of an art. And of course, the truth is it's very complicated, but it can be boiled down and it is manageably understood and comprehensible. And it goes something like this. Consider carefully what your psyche is exposed to at any moment of the day. We could call this the ecology of your psyche. It's like the frog in the pond. The frog's skin is permeable and it's very sensitive to what goes on in the chemistry of the pond. It's nourished or exposed to toxins at any given moment throughout the entire day. Soaks up nourishment, soaks up toxins. The frog's healthy functioning depends, in large part anyway, on what is being exposed to. The same is true of your psychological existence. Your psyche is drenched in each of the moments of the day with its nourishment or lack of it. The eco-psychological environment has always had a psychic economy at work. We're not always aware of that, but it's always been working. We don't think about it too much, but we're very, very much affected by it. It takes in nourishment, just like the frog, through the things that is exposed to during the day. We'll call this the psychic income, the taking in the nourishment, and it expends energy through other kinds of relationships and activity. We call it psychic expenditure. When the income exceeds expenditure, there arises a surplus, which fills you up emotionally. It fills up as emotional reserves. And when expenditures exceed income, you draw on those reserves to do the work. It's like a rechargeable battery. Now, throughout childhood, this is also going on, of course, and you were taken care of and nourished more or less, sheltered from extreme psychic expenditures, more or less, hopefully, so that by the time you leave for college, you are filled up with emotional reserves, hopefully. But, and here's the kicker, then you leave home and you are removed from the very sources of the psychic nourishment that were filling you up. You're cut off and plopped down into a dorm room in Pittsburgh full of little psychic reserves and the rest of your stuff, and you need to quickly establish new sources of emotional income before your battery runs dry. Now, the very fact that you are all here today means that you have managed well enough your psychic economy, at least to this point. When you were a freshman, though, when your emotional income was at its lowest because you had just been removed from your sources, as long as you were filled up as you set out, you had time to reestablish new resources. That's why this system of sending kids off to college tends to work. Students tend to do okay psychologically, but there was a real psychic vulnerability lurking. We're just usually not aware of it as you began college, because your psychic expenditure at this time happens to be at the highest when your emotional income is at the lowest. Everything was new and took a lot of energy. The stress of knowing nobody, having to establish new relationships, a major source of income, doing all the things you as a young adult had to figure out, not to mention the heavy academic workload. These take a lot of psychic investment. And just like with finances, if your psychic expenditures chronically exceeded your psychic income, the psyche must begin austerity measures to try to balance the ledgers. This means that the psychic system may start to, if it continues, may start to shut down. The non-essential functions usually go first, by higher cortical functions. We might recognize this. You might have experienced it as burnout, when you stare at the page and nothing gets in. These higher functioning kind of activities like taking in calculus problems are not seen as essential to your psychic system, so they tend to go out the window. You feel intellectually dull and inefficient, exhausted, without reserves, no stamina. There's no more left to borrow because the income has not been there. Now, if this is chronic, then the chronically malnourished freshman is flirting with a real serious threshold. The system can be overheating. It could be operating at a level far from your best, and you notice your own struggle and the poor performance, and you feel bad about that too. Self-esteem and self-confidence tend to take a hit when that happens. So the temptation is to work more because you're not doing so well, and play less, meaning you spend less time taking in emotional nourishment, so you have less to spend when it is time to work. You become more inefficient and do less well, and so you play even less, and you can see the cycle continuing This is what I call the second semester sophomore syndrome, not because it just happens to sophomores, but because I discovered it a long time ago with college sophomores. By the second semester, if they had not established enough emotional income, if they've spent too much time working and not enough time playing, not enough time taking care of themselves emotionally, they started to work more and more, play less and less, and ended up in my office not knowing why they felt so rotten, why they were doing so badly, why they're so depleted and depressed. Now, to the student, of course, the way out of this trap seems very paradoxical. What he needs to do, of course, is play more and work less, if you want to look at it simplistically. And by the way, it's often paradoxes like these that keep therapists like me employed. It's not obvious that you ought to be spending more time playing, but that's the way it works. More than anything else, he needs to fill up so that his psychic economy can return to viability. And in time, if he's able to fill up emotionally, gain the emotional reserves, then he'll start to function more efficiently. And only then will the beautiful and complex psychic system that is the student start to function like a well-oiled machine that it is. If you are a psychic Ferrari, I like to say, then you have to take care of yourself like it's a Ferrari. Not that I would know what that means, really. But all of you here have succeeded at this. That's why you are here. The proof is the fact that you've made it through this crazy obstacle course we call CMU. You took on the task long ago, and again, notice, in spite of great uncertainty, just like today, you have navigated all the unknowns and made it through successfully. This truth is what gives us all good reason to trust in your psychic system. Your psychic system works. We are not just being positive and reassuring. We have reason to think that this is all going to work out okay. In uncertain circumstances that you face today and in the coming months, you can again rely on yourselves to come through successfully if you take care of yourself. You have proved yourself worthy of trust. And reminding yourself of this, even though it may not feel like it all the time, can be something of a soothing salve as you're trying to, of all crazy things, navigate employment in the middle of a pandemic. To balance the psychic economy ledgers, you have to know at least a couple of things. What exactly counts as psychic income for me, and what counts as psychic expenditures for me. You probably have a good idea of what expenditures are. Your schoolwork, of course, things you have to do like housework, laundry, bureaucratic stuff. Any of a variety of difficult interactions with others, family, friends, romantic partners, professors, tensions, bad feelings, breaking up with your mate, etc. Moments spent doing these are basically counted as psychic net loss. It's expense. Even if you enjoy the work you're doing, that's very nice and a good thing, but it still counts as expense. Now, what counts as psychic income, and this is kind of the important point here. This can be a little bit trickier to get right, but basically, we can say it involves answers to these three questions. And I'd like to move through this slowly so that you can ask yourself the questions, at least for a moment, and see what happens inside of you. They're all kind of the same questions coming from a different little angle. The first one, ask yourself, what do I love? What matters to me? What do I care about? What kind of person am I? And my favorite, again, I'm moving a little faster than I want to. What makes me come alive? What makes me come alive? Now, I want you to take some moments to sink through the first layers of answers that you might answer. What do I love, for example? Well, my family, my friends, I love my dog and my work, and I'd like to sit beyond those first handful of answers that come to you so that you can sink into the more nascent, quieter regions of the interior wilderness that is your marvelous psyche, and allow a moment for those things to come up so that you really know it's that access to that place that you're wanting to have when you think about taking care of yourself. Moments spent taking in psychic income are the moments spent in genuine connection in that place in you. I like to divide it into 3 different spheres of the cosmos. And it takes all 3 of these spheres to really have a good psychological growth and movement. This bar stool has 3 legs and you need all of them. The first one, 3 different ways to connect. Connection with yourself, the kind I was just referring to, this depthful connecting with your interior. These are quiet, thoughtful moments, reflections, or formal meditation. It doesn't have to be somber, it can be goofy, it can be also singing or dancing to yourself, being with yourself in a reflective way, coming to know who you are, understanding your own history, your own narrations in life, how you became who you are, recalling memories, working and integrating these memories into who you are. Now, for better or worse, this pandemic has offered us some great opportunities to recognize the sweet uses of solitude. I don't mean loneliness or aloneness, but solitude, these moments when you can sink in like that. That's the first part. Intimacy with my connection with myself. These are the ways that we fill up. Number 2, connection between myself and others. This is the most common thing that we usually think of when we engage others in a genuine and open way. Having tea with a friend. We're not talking about anything highfalutin necessarily. Being in a food fight with your buddies as you hang out in the common room, it doesn't matter. It doesn't even have to be legal. As long as it's something that means something to you and it's enlivening and makes sense in your life. Being part of a team or a club or some kind of gathering of friends. This is, of course, a real problem during a pandemic, but you have to do what you can. So your relationship with yourself, relationship with others, and then the third part, relationship with the rest of the world, both natural and built. Playing your guitar, music, petting your cat, your love of nature, noticing this, taking a moment to notice the singing birds outside your window in the morning sun, taking a walk in the park, meaningfully engaging the space you inhabit, whatever it may be. Depthful connection in each of these 3 spheres is how you fill up psychically. Now, these are most nourishing and enlivening when you are genuinely present and open to the experience as you are in it. And of course, this is the hard part. It's tricky. The quality of the relating matters. It involves an effort that you can make toward intimate engagement. It really matters that you are there in the moment. It's not nearly as nourishing if you just phone it in through superficial involvement. You know, you can surf through the moments of experience like you can surf through the channels on the TV, or at least we used to. Or, you know, surfing through the day. You can skim your life and never sink into the richness. And the task here is to slow it down so that you sink into the richness. So that you don't simply miss out on most of the nourishment that is there to be had. If you're surfing through the moments, it'll be like being at a feast, but nibbling all the time. Or like I saw one time, person at a Pittsburgh Symphony listening to Beethoven with cotton in his ears. The richness of almost any moment is there for the experiencing, and filling up is most efficient when you are meaningfully investing yourself in the moment, when you're inhabiting yourself as a living being. And this is an art. This is not like I can just do it, like I can just do dishes. This is something you have to become better at. And it's hard to explain exactly how you do it. It's a little bit like riding a bicycle. I can kind of help you up and move you along, but You will come to know how to do it if you pay attention to yourself, and you can become better at it. You just have to get on and start writing. Now, in addition to the two categories, income and expenditures, there's another category I've not mentioned, helps us understand the first two. And the highly technical, esoteric term I use is vegging, and it is exactly what you're thinking it is, vegging. These are moments when I'm clearly not working, nothing productive is getting done, though I may be pretending to work, and I'm clearly not engaged and invested in my own life. I don't feel filled up at the end of it, or renewed, or enlivened in any way. Instead, I feel drained. This is what we call vegging. Not only is it not enlivening, but time has passed. These activities often involve screens, of course, and I don't mean to demonize screens, but we all know the difference between watching 13 episodes of your favorite show on Netflix, or playing video games for 12 hours and forgetting to eat, or thumbing through your news feeds or your Facebook for hours on end. It can be a very enlivening and fun thing to do, and enjoyable and quite a wonderful thing. But there comes a point beyond which, when we all know that we are just being drained, and we might even recognize that we don't even want to be there, but we continue to do it anyway. We don't even know why, but we just keep doing it. It's hard to describe exactly when you're vegging, when you're on a screen especially, and when you are not, but we all know it when we see it, even if we're in the middle of doing it. The problem with vegging is threefold. First off, it's an alienating way of being with yourself. It is really, in a fundamental sense, an escape, an abandonment of yourself, and yourself really does not like that. It's not good for self-esteem to abandon it. It's not really living your life. The second thing is that it's time lost, and there is no CMU student alive who has time to waste, but it's lost, it's genuinely lost time. And the third thing about it that is problematic is that psychic energy is spent and nothing is gained. It's like starting your car, letting it run in the driveway for 10 hours, and going nowhere. It uses gas, it wears out the car, and you get nothing out of it. Vegging is this kind of escape from life. It's not an engagement. When I return, I am worse off than when I left. And this is too often the default way of spending time. Like if you're working and too exhausted, you're kind of really not working, and it shifts over to vegging. You don't work effectively, but you won't allow yourself the freedom to go out and do something that might actually be fulfilling. Now, I do suggest that you keep track if you want to. I mean, it's kind of a strange way of spending your day, but keep track of the three different dimensions of relating throughout your day. In your average 16-hour workday, how many hours is spent, or minutes, working, vegging, or filling up? And notice that there's no magical numbers or proportions to guide us here. The proportions have to be understood relative to, the overall trajectory of your past years, how filled up or depleted you are, what you're dealing with today, might be dealing with in the coming months. But it's good to recognize that a little bit of filling up usually goes a long way. Just engaging someone, a good friend, in the cut, and feeling that good sense of connection with somebody just for a moment can be a lot. Or calling a friend, or noticing the birds out the window. A little bit of this goes a long way. It also, when it comes to proportions, matters how efficiently your psychic system works, which, by the way, is typically what we deal with, or at least I do in psychotherapy, making the psychic system more efficient by helping the person let go of unnecessary historic investments that interfere with taking in and metabolizing the emotional nourishment. For example, if I've been hurt by people, I may keep people at a distance, and so I don't allow myself to be vulnerable, so I put up walls in front of people. So today, this is habitual throughout my life, so in order to not be hurt, I put up the walls, and therefore I keep out the exact nourishment that might be coming in from my friends today, so that I'm swimming in good nourishment, but not a lot of it is getting in. That's why therapists ask you about your history, to unpack all that stuff. And also to improve the integration of the parts of the system so it works as a whole, synergistically. So you have pieces working against each other, wasting psychic energy. So if you think about your current predicament, I'm graduating, transitioning to the next thing. You're just like the high school kid going off to college. But for both of them, we can see that this is the time to be storing up as much psychic income as possible. You will be using that energy as you leave your current sources and try to establish new ones. And stress levels and psychic expenditures will be high in the coming months. So no matter whatever your current level of income, emotional income is, the task of nourishing yourself, taking care of yourself during your job search would involve increasing and maximizing psychic income, more, minimizing as much as you can psychic expenditure, which is not always easy, but there is something to it. For example, I'm given so much work I need to do, but perhaps I can, instead of applying to 280 jobs, I can apply to 180 jobs and use the diminishing returns from the moments spent investing into that last 100 to filling up so that I can be at my best at the first 180. And third, minimizing vegging time and using that for nourishment or work that you need. Now, just as a little tip, here's one tip, a rare tip that I will offer. The trick often is, if you pay attention to the 3 different dimensions, how you spend your time, the trick is to shrink the daily vegging time spent. If you do news feeds for an hour, do it for a half hour. If you thumb through for Facebook for 20 minutes, do it for 2 minutes. And watch as the amount of shrinkage of the vegging time goes down over the course of the next weeks, but also increasing your psychic income time by doubling down on your current sources. If you have friends, reach out to them. Initiate rather than not initiate. Engage people rather than not engage people. You can revive old ways of meaningfully spending your time. Like, when was the last time you actually got your guitar out and spent some time with that old buddy? And you can explore new ways of spending time. This is, in fact, another transition. Just like what you did in high school is different from what you did in college. Sources of nourishment keep transforming over time. So you're entering now this next young adult phase, and then there will be a whole world of new ways of filling yourself up to be had. So that's the task. Be mindful of what your psyche is exposed to during the moments of the day, maximizing the emotional nourishment coming in that depthful, meaningful, connected way. Okay, shall we move to the next? I think I'll stop there.
Yep, I am. Whoop, okay. So now we're going to move on to talking about what are some frequently asked questions that we hear from a lot of students, and some of them you submitted. So we're going to talk about those. So the first one is, I'm having a hard time finding a job. Why should I even bother? So the first thing, you want to reflect on the pros and cons of applying versus not applying. So earlier in this presentation, I talked about there are jobs that are out there, and companies are still recruiting. If you don't apply to those companies or to those positions, the likelihood of you getting a job is none. So even though it seems you're feeling hopeless about the job search and that you're feeling like there aren't a lot of jobs out there, shift your focus to hopeful and use some of the strategies by, being more flexible in how you're approaching your job search, and be active in applying. Even if you don't hear back, the fact that you are actively applying gives you a better shot of gaining experience and getting a job than not participating at all. And then again, like I said, focus on the industries that are doing well when you're doing your job search, so IT, healthcare, things like that. And remember, like Jeff was mentioning, lessen the amount of time that you're vegging and do things. So, just applying for jobs is not the only way that you can actively participate in professional development and getting a job. networking can help with that, as well as doing your own personal projects and taking classes. So making sure that you're taking time to not just sit hours and hours and hours on end looking for jobs and applying, but diversify what you're doing and change it up so that you are actively engaging. Does anybody else have anything to add to that? Okay. All right. So the next question is, how can we detach from the job search when it's time to stop for the day?
I think a good place to start with that is maybe pulling a lot of what Jeff was talking about. How do we nurture ourselves? How do we take care of ourselves instead of resisting and avoiding? How do we recognize that in this moment right now, I need to take a step back from the job search, or I need to pause for the day, or I need to boundary it so I'm not thinking about it all the time. And how do I maybe sit with and tolerate feeling really stressed or really anxious or frustrated or sad or angry? So really allowing yourself to feel that, as difficult as it is. And in doing that, you're able to then recognize what feels better for you. You're able to recognize what is healthier for you and how to kind of create those boundaries on a day-to-day basis, from searching for a job to taking breaks from it. And then, of course, reattaching to yourself, reconnecting with self. What is it that you are feeling really disconnected from right now? What about the job search feels really difficult for you right now? How can you maybe recognize that there are some things that are not within your control and connect back to the things that are within your control? So really reflecting on some of that could be a really good place to start. Other things to consider is fear of missing out on opportunities or not doing enough, striving for perfection. These are common thoughts that we frequently have, especially around applying for jobs. Feeling like we don't want to submit the application because it's never perfect, it's never good enough, so we'll just keep working and working and working on it until it feels fatiguing and we burn out. Being really patient and compassionate and forgiving with self, allowing yourself space to not be on and perfect all the time. Allowing yourself to be impacted by the world around you and recognizing that that's okay. Go ahead, Amy.
And determining your goals can be on a weekly or daily basis, can be really helpful because the job search can seem never ending. And so determining what is important to you to finish that day or to finish that week can really focus your search, focus what you're doing for the day and the week, and make things not seem so overwhelming. And you can also see how much you're able to accomplish, and that can really help kind of boost your confidence through the search. And like Dareen mentioned, setting those boundaries are really important in separating yourself from the job search and reattaching to yourself. So the boundaries could mean physical space, by either you do your job search in one room and then you don't go in that room for the rest of the day, or it could be that you put your computer away, you physically remove yourself or remove temptation to participate so that you can take some time for yourself. And also scheduling time can also be a good way to set boundaries. So figuring out what time in the day you feel most confident and ready to participate, and then scheduling that time. And then when that time is over, that's when you again detach yourself from the job search and focus on taking care of yourself. And then the next question, how can I overcome feelings of not being qualified?
I think that really this bleeds into a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about already. Again, this thought of nurturing versus nurturing some of those feelings that you have, even if they're not necessarily the best feelings to feel, versus pushing them aside or repressing them, resisting them, or avoiding. It's in that avoidance that really we become so consumed by some of those negative feelings that we experience. So if you, again, create space within yourself to experience that and to sit with that and to hold it, provide yourself compassion around that in the same way that you would provide for a friend who is going through the exact same thing. So if you're able to do that, you're able to tap into that and create space, and then free yourself from some of those feelings around not being good enough, not feeling qualified, around imposter syndrome. That would, again, be a really good place for you to start and to sink into understanding what's going on for you.
And like Jeff mentioned, you have already done a transition period from college, from high school to college, and you've accomplished that. So remember all that you've already accomplished. So you've graduated, you've worked on many projects, you've maybe participated in research or some extracurricular activities or volunteering. You've already done a lot so far. And so you have already proven that you can accomplish things. So just remind yourself of those. And then remember that, you know, you're just graduating and you're going to be applying to more entry-level positions, and the mere fact that you are applying to, you know, entry-level positions, that's expected, that you are just coming out of college and you might not have that much experience. And so companies are going to recognize that and remember that jobs are learning experiences. So when you go to your first job, you're going to have to kind of learn new things, and you're going to be gaining new skills that you'll eventually be able to continue on. So just remember that you're going in as an entry-level position, and you're going to be learning in that experience.
One of the most common things that I hear as a therapist is for students who are about to graduate will feel kind of, you know, battered and bruised because you've been through the war just now. This is a tough road to walk through CMU. But that's exactly what makes you prepared in a way. So it may feel like you're not prepared. It may feel like you're not ready. And students will say that almost all the time. It feels that way when you're in this kind of position. That doesn't mean that that's the reality of it. That's just how it feels at the moment. And without exception, when I hear down the road, which is a lovely thing for a therapist to do, you hear a couple of years down the road, somebody calls back and says, wow, things are really going well. You know, I wish I had known now what I did, or back then what I know now. You know, I'd feel a lot more at ease with myself back then. So the truth is that this is part of the process, is that it sometimes feels like you're not ready when in fact you are.
And I believe this is the last question. How can we maintain a positive outlook after a string of unexpected rejections?
I think recognizing that rejections are hard, but they are very much a part of life and of the experiences that you're going to be having. We will all experience rejections fairly often, and that's okay. So I think really disconnecting yourself from the rejection itself. If you are rejected from a job, it doesn't mean that you are personally not good enough. It just means that it wasn't a good fit. So trying to disconnect that part is really a good way for you to begin to think through how to better handle and tolerate some of those rejections that you will undoubtedly experience. Also, to kind of reference what Jeff was talking about regarding psychic income, take an assessment of where you are, how are you feeling after these rejections, what do you need to do in order to kind of rebuild that psychic income that you have. If you are feeling really down, if you are feeling really really that rejections are heavy and you're not in a very good place, take a break. It's okay to do that. It's okay to refuel and to rebuild that psychic income that you have. Try to engage in something that brings you joy. Try to engage in something that makes you feel more secure, more confident, in order to really combat everything else that's been happening. Reminding yourself of your successes, reminding yourself that you've gotten to this point, that there have been many successes that followed that, and reminding yourself of what you can and can control. What is within your control right now? What can you do? What is not within your control? Getting a rejection is not really within your control. You have no idea what the process is. You don't know what they're looking for, what their expectations are. Really, the best that you can do is be present and do what it is within your control, which is a lot of the stuff that Amy was talking about.
And just to kind of do a brief overview of what are some resources that are available to you. So for both students and alumni, you are welcome to use the Career and Professional Development Center. You can meet with your career consultant about if you're feeling really lost, you don't know where to start, or you don't know what jobs you should be looking for, or how to do a resume, or you're scared about virtual interviews, you can meet with your career consultant and talk to them about different strategies and what resources are out there to support you in this job search. There's also, they're doing virtual career fairs. There's one coming up soon, and they have webinars like this one on ways to support yourself and resources out there through your job search. And you can just schedule an appointment using Handshake. And then students, you can talk about the counseling portion, Dareen and Jeff, if you want.
Yeah, so counseling services at CAPS continue to remain open. If you are still enrolled as a student in CAPS and are feeling like you need some additional support, maybe around career stuff, maybe around everything else that's happening right now, then please give us a call. We will guide you through the process. We will consult with you if need be. If you are within the state of Pennsylvania right now, we can offer teletherapy, so our services continue or have moved to virtual space. If you aren't within Pennsylvania, we can still provide some consultation and guidance regarding how to get you connected if that feels like the best thing to do. We're also offering many other services as well, including workshops that are open to everybody, support groups that are open as well. So please check our website for any additional information that you might want, or just give us a call.
And alumni, there are some resources down at the bottom that you can, if you're interested in looking for some therapy, Thriving Campus, or Psychology Today are great resources that you can use to look up therapists. I don't know, Dareen, if you want to say anything.
Yeah, and if you are a recent graduate, or if you are wrapping up this summer and are needing assistance feeling connected or getting connected to somebody in the community and are not really knowing where to start because this can be a little bit overwhelming, again, give us a call and we would be more than happy to guide you through that.
And there are some hotlines, and then CAPS does on their website have a list of resources that you can use as well. We can use the chat. We have a few minutes. If anybody has any questions, feel free to send it in the chat. We'll give you a few minutes. All right, it doesn't look like we have any questions, but you're welcome to reach out if you have any questions after this presentation. But I also wanted to remind you and to let you know, if you don't know already, some of the CPDC opportunities that you are all welcome to participate in. So like I mentioned, there's going to be a virtual career fair tomorrow for alumni, and you can find all of these events on Handshake. So you can just type in the title and you can find them. There are a few other workshops, so get your foot in the door, reach out to professionals is I'm going to give you some tips on how to talk to and network with other professionals. And then your successful job search, how to structure it with tools and timelines. That's going to be a presentation on how you can manage your time and how do you structure your search so that you're organized and you feel like it's a seamless process as much as it can be. And then there are going to be job search success groups. So from your career consultant, they're going to be emailing you about specific job search groups that you are going to be working with your peers to support each other and talk about what works and what doesn't through this process of looking for jobs.
Some of the CAPS workshops that we are offering over the summer, there are so many more that you could find on our website or on Talkify in general. We are offering a couple of different things, some that are series workshops, like the skills for managing conflict. There are a series of 3 of them that are happening at the same time for you to join. There are other workshops as well that also happen to be a series if you're wanting something a little bit more longer term than just a one-off workshop. One other workshop that I feel like would be really, really helpful, especially as we go through this process, is the one that's happening on June 2nd. It's about how to navigate or manage our inner critic, which is something I believe that most CMU students experience and encounter fairly frequently. Another important one to really highlight is the one around sleep. This is a series workshop. You don't have to attend all three, but you can attend the first or the second or whichever order that you want. We recognize that a lot of the anxiety that we're experiencing right now can lead to some difficulty in our sleep. So felt it was really important to have conversations about how to regulate and manage your sleep, since it's really important in kind of grounding you and your overall well-being.